Hello and welcome to Central Georgia Focus. I'm Liz Fabian and this is Ask Mayor Miller. Shortly after Lester Miller took office, he agreed, when time permitted, to sit down with the Center for Collaborative Journalism and answer the public's questions. So we welcome Mayor Lester Miller today, and we're going to speak with him. You know, we started this right after you started taking office, and now here we are after your first fiscal year budget. So could you kind of tell us a little bit about your spending priorities heading into fiscal year 23?
I think we continue to do some of the things that we built on last year. First of all, public safety has always been at the top priority. As you can imagine, on $198 million, approximately $85 million of that is for public safety. People have told us throughout the community it's very important. At the same time, we must continue to address other issues like blight, beautification, taking care of staffing to make sure we're fully staffed and run a very efficient government. So we're very excited this year not only to have a balanced budget, but also have some reserve there as well without any tax increase. I think that's very important that we can get those necessities that we need to get done without having to increase the taxes.
Of course, the OLOST also passed, so you're actually anticipating rolling back the taxes next year, correct? And probably also a millage rate adjustment this year because of the added property values.
Yeah, we certainly anticipate a millage rate reduction this year to a pretty good amount, and I think next year for a substantial amount. So between this year and next year, we do expect the county portion of the taxes to decrease some 35 to 40% on the county side. So we're very excited about the possibility of doing that. The OLOS is something that just started, and I think a lot of people are voted for that, number one. Number two, they realize that we have to collect it the first year and roll it back the next year. So the largest amount of decrease will come next year when they get their tax bill for 2023. So I think that's something that we're going to have to play by ear because we don't know how much money will come in. It's penny for penny. So whatever we collect, we'll be rolling back, and I think they'll see a substantial decrease next year.
All right, well, let's get to some of our viewer questions. Jeff Penland has a question about priorities. You mentioned a little bit about your spending priorities. He hears on the news about the I-75 ramp beautification and the demolition of the Greyhound bus station and other things that are designed to make the area more attractive. So he says he can't leave his driveway, though, in either direction without encountering potholes. So he says his property taxes have tripled in the past 15 years, and he can't see what he's paying for. So what is he paying for?
Well, I can tell you that the roads are on the minds of everyone, always. We've recently had a work session with our commission, and we have another one coming up in July. So I think there's some good news on the horizon as far as roads is concerned. We understand that roads is part of the problems that we have, but we have 1,100 miles of roads in Macon-Bibb County. And the previous policy that's set in place that they've been repairing roads have been about 14 miles per year. As you can imagine, most people may not live long enough to see the roads being paved. So we've pretty much determined this is not acceptable. We must do something differently. We do have some new equipment that's going to come in. That's a hot machine that allows us to repair those potholes to a more pristine efficient position. I think that's going to help out a lot. At the same time, we're doing a road by road, street by street analysis with our robotics team to make sure that we grade all the roads, look at the traffic counts, and then come up with more money to spend. Right now, the county only spends about $700,000 of SPLOST money plus a $2.3 million LMIG from the state each year. Not quite making the impact that we need to make. But the other complication we have is it used to cost about $250,000 for asphalt per mile per road. Now it's about $350,000, so our money is going a lot less these days. So we have to look for that. But I think you're going to see some very creative ways from the administration and commissioners in the next couple of months to actually repair these roads. But it's not a quick fix overnight. You would have to spend over $100 million probably to repair all the roads in Macon-Bibb County. But we do have a grading system. We know that the roads that are 5, some that are 4, that are 3. So we're going to take those that are most serious and most traveled first and start putting some money where our mouth is this year. And I think you'll see that probably by August we'll have a new policy in place and we'll start putting more money aside for roads and maybe looking at additional SPLOST monies as well.
You mentioned LMIG, that's Local Maintenance Improvement Grant, in case you're not in government right now. Now, Jeff also wanted to know, talking about the safety in neighborhoods, so what is being done in terms of increasing police presence throughout the community?
Well, a couple of things we've done, and we could talk days about all the things that we've done to address public safety. once again, this is something that's not going to happen overnight, but it's a long-term fix. We're getting to the root causes, but at the same time, we realize that we need a better police presence. I just left a meeting with about 100 mayors in Georgia. They all had the same struggles. They can't find the quality of workforce they need and staffing for the police and sheriff's departments. It's a national pandemic, if you will. What we've done is we have a $40 million incentive pay that we're doing over the next 10 years to retain the officers that we have. We've seen some success in that. We've also increased the pay over the last 2 years about 25% for new hirees to make sure that we're able to do that. The sheriff at the same time is considering things like not allowing them or making them required to work at the jail the first 2 years, and that's something that will help out a lot. And also relaxing things about getting your hair cut or having facial hair or having tattoos. Some people may think that's just some quirky or funny, but every community talked about that this weekend, that they're relaxing those policies because they want to remove any barriers that they have to attract the quality public safety they need. So we're continuing to put our money where the mouth is as far as the public safety. At the same time, we're doing things like community foundation grants that we have that we just recently announced, about $800,000 going out into the community to help solve the problems that they have in their own communities. So neighborhoods can get involved, nonprofits can get involved, and they've got a lot of very bright ideas on how we can prevent crime from even happening and targeting our youth, and I think it's going to be very successful over the next year.
And Margie Sheffield, she lives in Lake Wildwood, and she said crime is increasing in that area. So how do you think that community kind of input will help maybe solve that issue for them?
When you have these gated communities, sometimes it can be a challenge because there are certain things that you're allowed to do and not allowed to do, and the police certainly have their challenges there. We have seen an uptick in burglaries and other types of crimes in the Lake Wildwood area. The sheriff has a patrol and a focused deterrence out in that area, and I think you'll see some new things come down the pipeline very soon in Lake Wildwood. It is somewhere near where I reside at, and I travel that road almost every day, if not multiple times a week. But it's a gated community that has to invest in itself as well. But it's one of those challenges that we have on the outside of the city of Macon. So it's one of those things that the sheriff's going to have increased patrols out there. He realizes that, and staffing continues to be an issue there.
And of course, there's also the speed limit cameras in some areas around school zones now too, that sort of, you don't have to have a patrolman sitting there watching to see if people are speeding. Right.
When you're faced with a deputy shortage that we have, and everybody has across the United States, you have to look for creative ways to supplement those deputies. And one of those is to have these cameras near school zone. It's not anything to make money. I can assure people it's not our money grab that some people try to claim it is. Certainly, we just want people to slow down. We want to provide safety for our kids to and from school. We want to prevent accidents in those areas. People have been asking for those as well. We use the money that we do collect for public safety, which helps us do that. We've also done some things in code enforcement and changing policies, some things we've done on vice marts. All these policy changes we have, all this technology that we're using is so we become less reliable and have to have so many deputies since we can't attract them right now.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Well, when we come back, we'll talk about the search for a new election supervisor and ways to beautify Macon-Bibb County. And we are back with this Central Georgia Focus Ask Mayor Miller edition. Mr. Mayor, there's been a little bit of back and forth between you and the Board of Elections in trying to hire a new election supervisor. They had nominated someone that didn't reach a vote on the commission, and now you're putting together a committee, and yet they have hired outside counsel now to try to hash this out. How is that going, and what's your rationale for setting up a committee like that?
Well, I think one of the things that you look at, first of all, we went through a consolidation, so there's going to be a little, I guess I wouldn't say a hiccup, but a little change in the mindset for folks that may not be used to how things used to happen and opposed to what they're happening now. Our primary goal is to get the most qualified, unbiased Board of Elections director we can have. And to do that, sometimes it takes time. It takes everybody working together in a unified effort. We have a different opinion between, I guess, our administration and the Board of Elections right now on what we believe the law says. There's places you can take care of that, and we'll be happy to address that at the proper time. Our goal is to make sure that we get the very best person to move our elections along in a way that's acceptable to the community. At the same time, I felt like it would be a fair process to have both commissioners as well as the Board of Elections involved. Put aside politics. We have to have people from both sides of the parties involved in that. But at the end of the day, the law is very clear that the governing authority for Macon-Bibb County makes that decision. It's not a decision that the Board of Elections or anyone else makes. We received a recommendation from them. It's one that was not acceptable. They actually withdrew the recommendation. But at the end of the day, we determine who the Board of Elections director is going to be. It takes a vote for at least 5 or 6 commissioners. At the same time, the only people who can contract with a Board of Elections director candidate is the county government. We have to set the price of that and the terms and conditions of any contract that comes in. So the bottom line is we're going to try to reach this together, whichever process it may take. We're going to do something that's open and transparent and fair to all sides. But the bottom line is we are elected officials. We are held accountable to the general public, and we're the ones that people are going to look to if something goes wrong. So we're going to make sure we do our due diligence. Our hope was to get a election director selected in the next couple of months, certainly before the election in November. This new process or this new wrinkle, I guess if you may, if they have outside counsel, I assume they have outside counsel, will probably guarantee that we will not have a director by November. So it may go on for a couple of years, who knows. I do know that we're investing millions and millions of dollars in the Board of Election new office at the Macon Mall. That's going to be one of the largest, but certainly one of the state-of-the-art places that we have. And it's certainly not something that I hope for to have any kind of issues with the Board of Election during this process. So those things will all be taken into consideration.
Now, you mentioned them moving to the mall because not only do we have the governor's race and the Senate race and the midterm congressional election, but then that big move comes from Pionono Avenue over to Macon Mall. Now that the bonds have been sold and contractors hired, have you made the final decision about what other departments might be moving to Macon Mall?
We've made several decisions. I think we're definitely going to be planning and zoning. Middle Georgia Regional will be over there. Safe Built will be over there. The Board of Elections will be over there. We'll continue to have a police presence inside the mall. It may move in the location that it's at. So we have several different departments there that we're going to have. We're trying to do a one-stop shop for business there. I think we can do that between online and the presence that we have there. We think it's going to be a very good atmosphere. Going to create a lot of foot traffic for there. Certainly on the bus route, plenty of parking there. When you go to vote for early voting, you won't have to worry about standing out in the heat or the cold. So I'm very excited about the move. We expect to move in there no later than next summer. So we're going ahead and got the design processes going, and all these directors have already been meeting with Dunwoody and Associates to go through there to design out this area there. We also have a new courtrooms coming to the mall as well to handle any overflow, to do any kind of mediation or arbitration and things like that at the courthouse too, so not everybody has to go down to the courthouse and slow up the wheels of justice that they have in these criminal cases.
We've had the groundbreaking for the amphitheater, but yet no dirt or anything has been moved yet beyond that. So what's the status of that project?
Oh, the amphitheater is going fine. Although no dirt has been moved, there's been soil testing, there's been stormwater things addressed, there's been things with Georgia Power about moving electricities. We've got the final charrettes that have been completed. Materials are being ordered, so everything's on schedule to open up at next summer. We're very excited about that. We're very excited about the possibility of having our 200th bicentennial celebration conclude at the amphitheater. So we're very excited about things that's going to happen next year. So I'm looking forward to that mall project. It's going to do wonderful things for our community, provide economic development, but also it's going to bring back the life of a depressed area, making it's going to benefit our entire community.
Well, Cyrus Walton wants to know, can the city of Macon afford to have waterfalls and fountains inside the old Macon Mall? He thinks it would make the remodeling look very nice.
Well, they're certainly very aesthetically pleasing, I would say, the fountains and all that. Malls remove those out for all kind of reasons. Number one, they're very expensive to operate. They break down a lot. They're not the cleanest things in the world, but certainly we're going to do everything we can to beautify that mall. We anticipate having one of the largest pickleball arenas in the United States if we get this taken care of next year. Some 32 courts that we will have there to host events. So we've got some sports, some entertainment, and we're in talks with many retailers about coming back to that mall, as well as some restaurants and certain things on the outside. So I think in the next 12 to 18 months, you're going to see a complete revitalization of that area begin. And over the next several years, it's going to get back to kind of what we remember it being, without necessarily all the retail in general. But you're going to see a lot of growth in the area, and we're already getting calls every day.
And now Cyrus also saying, sees that there's efforts made by Keep Macon-Bibb Beautiful, and that is really been increasing in your administration. But is there any thought to putting together a permanent or temporary small crew that would continually rove around the streets of Macon and pick up the trash?
We have that in place now. We have our own strike force. As you know, we had to phase out the landfill in Macon-Bibb County. We're going through a closure process now. It takes a couple of years to do that, but it's supposed to have been done over the last several years, and it certainly has not been done. So we are officially closing the landfill. We have these convenience centers that are beginning to be opening now, but we have our own strike force, and you can do C-click fix, but we also have a lot of the probationers, people that are on probation doing community service. So now when we get notified of a particular area that needs to have increased pickup, we're able to assign those or reach out to them for the community service. And they've been doing a pretty good job of picking it up. You know, the best way to keep a place clean is to not throw the litter down, and we got to continue to educate people. That's why I'm very excited about the job that Aisha's doing over there at the Keep Macon-Bibb Beautiful. She's had many cleanups already, but she's getting out to our youth, educating them. Just 2 weeks ago, I was with the Next Level group on Holt. They had some 60 to 70 youth from the age of 6 to 16 picking up trash. And you could hear the comments they were making about why do people do this. So maybe we're starting the education process, and it's just going to have to be to change the mind and change the culture in our community to take care of that.
I know. I was on the way to work that day and I saw those crews out there, and I kept circling the block taking different pictures of them for me to put it on Twitter, because you're absolutely right. You know, in our generation it was Iron Eyes Cody sitting there crying when there were, you know, wrappers thrown on the street. But it made an impression with young people that you don't throw things out, and you do see litter in all kinds of places. What about your progress with dump sites around the county?
We've made a good impact on the big dump sites. We still have a few that pop up. We have some prosecutions that's going to be happening. Our tire amnesty worked out really well with the number of tires that we have. The convenience center, people love in this convenience center. I mean, it's open 7 days a week. We accept tires and batteries and liquids and paints and concrete and everything you just about can recycle outside of glass right now. So I think that's really starting to make an effort and an impact in our community. We're going to continue to open up at least 4 or 5 more. We have 2 more working right now. They're working out there. I've been visiting those sites, one off of Montpelier, the other off of Fulton Mill Road. So we're starting to see a good change. We're going to continue to do those manifestos on tires, because we believe a lot of these tire companies are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're paying someone, and they're still dumping these tires in our community. And not only tires, people that are getting evicted, getting paid to do evictions or to haul off materials, are taking those to, you know, cul-de-sacs and wooded areas instead of taking them to the convenience centers that we offer here locally.
All right, well, when we come back, we'll talk about boarding houses and the regulations governing them. Welcome back to Central Georgia Focus, Ask Mayor Miller. Mr. Miller, we have a question from Cherie Bell, who says that rooming houses are taking over Macon, some with more than 10 residents, and there are lots of problems with drugs and violence, unkept properties. They're zoned residential, but they often have 4 or more trash receptacles. So here we are back to garbage, right? That's a common topic for Ask Mayor Miller. And so are they paying that same fee even though they have more household trash? And who's responsible for overseeing that? And why isn't P&Z enforcing regulations?
Well, a couple of things there. Number one, you pay for every trash receptacle you have. So if they've got 2 or 3 receptacles there, they're paying per receptacle. So it's always nice to know that. The other thing is we do have laws governing rooming houses, boarding houses, whatever you want to call them. Right now we're faced with a situation where there's a severe shortage of houses, not just in Macon, but all across the United States. And affordable housing, workforce housing is a challenge. We're starting that process now. I think you'll see a lot more opportunities to have for housing over the next year, and some programs that we've got coming out and some plans that we have. I think we'll alleviate some of those issues. At the same time, we have code enforcement actually checking these out. When we get a call about now, we send code enforcement there. Planning and zoning is getting more actively involved. We have a new leader there in the planning and zoning. So we just have to be notified of this incident. Not all boarding houses are places where people use drugs. It's just need a place to stay, and otherwise they're going to be homeless, so we have to be mindful of that. But we do have rules and regulations in place, and there's only a certain amount allowed per house, and we need to make sure the issue that planning and zoning code enforcement knows about it so we can address it. A lot of times people think that we automatically know about things that are happening in our community when we don't. So we need to make sure we get the information to the people that can make the difference Planning and zoning doesn't have an arm that goes out to do a lot of things. They certainly don't have a lot of enforcement. So we must start with the police as far as your calls is concerned, who are already short-staffed, but you still must contact them.
Is it a see, click, fix kind of thing too, or no? It's
it
not
could
really
be,
a
but it
category?
doesn't necessarily get on that list. You can do code enforcement. I say start off with the sheriff if it's drugs and those types of things. If you're having problems with a lot of cars out there, overgrown yards, code enforcement is the way to go there, and then planning and zoning. They can all work together to address those issues. Because we really want to cut down crime and those types of things, but at the same time we have to be mindful that we're short on housing, and some of those folks, if not living in that particular area, they need to behave, but they may be living under a bridge or in the woods somewhere or in a tent until we get enough affordable housing. So we're going to continue to be diligent in enforcing the law, and we've asked them to do that, but we have to know about it specifically.
All right, Brian Sullivan wants to know, why haven't the ball fields in Central City Park, Carolyn Creighton Park, been completed yet? Well,
they're working on the ball fields there, and we certainly have a lot of tournaments that we're going to be hosting there for economic development. But one of the things when I came in, I noticed, because I have experience in the sports training facilities and hosting tournaments, is that the ball fields that they had set up were just too small. They're too small. They didn't meet the guidelines for hosting tournaments. So I asked them not to put the fences up and the poles up, because we have to have at least 300 feet to host these tournaments to make the money and to bring the teams that we need to have. So that's one of the things we had to do. You're in the middle of a pandemic, but most importantly, we're working close with Georgia Power. We have some transformers and some powers that has to be moved. That takes time to do that. So there's more pressing needs, but we expect that to be done. All the money has been allocated to do that. It's going to look really nice, and we're going to host some events there. We already have at least 2 tournaments that are 300 to 500 teams for softball scheduled. So we're getting back to those Flag City shootout days that we can stay out there all night, have a good time, good fellowship, but also bring some good money into Macon-Bibb County.
Now, of course, talking about Central City Park and workforce housing, there was just the groundbreaking this week for the new apartment complex with the Macon Housing Authority and Daybreak Respite. Mike Austin says he's part of the Walnut Street gang, trying to get some improvements there on that approach to Carolyn Creighton Park. Anything in the works?
Oh, certainly we have something in the works, but we're going to have to make sure all the construction gets done first. It's going to be 12 to 18 months down the road. From the MLK, Martin Luther King, down to Carolyn Creighton Park, there's going to be some very good beautification that happens, some replacing the roads. A lot of landscaping that's going to be done. We have to work with our partners with the railroad, and that always can be a struggle sometimes, but they've been a willing partner, and we have to identify funds to do that. So I'm very excited about the new entrance to Carolyn Creighton Park as well. But we can't do that until this construction is done, and we expect it to take 12 to 18 months. But as soon as that's complete, we're going to be ready to go.
Well, Mr. Mayor, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us this week. And we will be back once a month here with Lester Miller. So we ask for you to please go ahead and send your questions into mercerccj@gmail.com, because we want to take your questions directly to the mayor each month. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Central Georgia Focus. I'm Liz Fabian, the Civic Journalism Senior Fellow at the Center for Collaborative Journalism at Mercer University.